Hi everyone, Patrick Menninga here, spiritualriver.com. In today's show, we want to do a couple of different things. We're going to talk about a topic, foundations of change, and how that affects addiction and recovery, how you can apply that to your own addiction and recovery, and what it means to build a foundation. We're going to take a question from a viewer. Someone from the audience has a question. We're going to try to answer that, give some help to that person. We're going to do a quote. I'll do a quick quote and some analysis of that, and then we'll give you an assignment and send you on your way. So let's get into this. Foundations of change in recovery. When we talk about early recovery, everything has changed. Typically, you're overwhelmed. You might go to treatment. You might check into a detox in a short-term treatment center, do 28 days. They're telling you to go to AA and NA meetings. They're telling you to go to counseling. You might do some outpatient after you leave. And everything's sort of changing all at once, and it's overwhelming, quite frankly. And people will be giving you advice. Therapists and sponsors will be giving you advice. Your peers in recovery, people at the meetings you might be going to, they're telling you what to do. And it's overwhelming. And so it's very difficult to prioritize change in early recovery. And so when I talk about foundations of change, what I'm really getting at is that there's certain changes that you need to make early on in your recovery journey to set yourself up for success. And what I mean by that is two things. Number one is setting yourself up for success means not relapsing. So that's one of the foundations, is you got to stay clean and sober in order to get to the rewards of recovery. And then the second part of that equation is after you've built this foundation and you're living your life in addiction recovery, what is sort of that next level of personal growth and all these benefits you get down the road, and the rewards of recovery just start to multiply and your life gets really, really good. And we all want that to happen, the week after we get out of treatment, and that's not realistic. But you can get there, and the hope is there, and you need to have faith that you will get there if you do the work. And so what is the work? What are those foundations of change that you need to make in early recovery? Well, a couple of things. One is go to treatment. Ask for help and go to treatment. This is basic recovery 101. If you've ever tried and failed to get clean and sober in the past and it hasn't worked for you, then you didn't have enough help. Simple as that. You can't do it by yourself. I couldn't do it by myself. And I have not seen successful examples where people were able to get clean and sober on their own. It just doesn't happen. So you need to ask for help, and part of that is going to inpatient treatment, detox, residential, maybe even more than that, counseling, outpatient, follow-up care, going to meetings after that, maybe even living in long-term treatment the way I did. Whatever it takes, treatment in some capacity is critical for most people in their recovery journey. I couldn't do it without building that foundation in treatment in a professional sense. Second of all, when we're talking about foundations of change, I would recommend that you've got to engage in personal growth in the long term. And that goes beyond just the things that are spoken of, say, at AA meetings, or just the things that are touched on when you do counseling one-on-one with a therapist for a 1-hour session. They'll give you suggestions and they'll tell you different things you can do, different actions you can take to help you in recovery. But what I'm talking about goes further than that. What I'm talking about is when you're at 2 years sober and you start working out every day, and it takes your recovery to a whole new level. And suddenly, even though you might have hated to exercise in the past, suddenly it's like your eyes are open and you feel good and you're working out every day, and it's this whole new level of recovery. Stuff like that, exercise, writing, journaling, reaching out to different people outside of the recovery community, finding ways to help people outside of the recovery community. So there's whole levels of personal growth that go beyond sort of the basics. But in order to get to those levels, you've got to start with the foundation. And so going to treatment, asking for help, plugging into meetings, getting some counseling, talking to a therapist, those are the kinds of foundations you need to build so that you can start getting to that next level of personal growth as you move through your recovery. Now, keeping that in mind, let's take a question from a viewer. Someone in the audience, her name is Samantha, and she made a comment and said she has 90 days clean and sober at this point, and she's been trying to work a program of recovery. She's got 90 days clean, and she's also struggling with depression. And so she reached out on the forum, the Spiritual River Forum, and asked the question, what's my next step? I'm at 90 days sober. I've been going to AA meetings. I did a brief stint in treatment. What's my next step here, given that I also struggle with depression? And so to answer that question, Samantha, I would say that it kind of goes along with what I was saying about the foundations and what those evolve into, the sort of that next level of personal growth. And what you want to do is look at your recovery and your personal growth in terms that go beyond just the sort of spiritual progress that you make in a typical recovery program. So if you go to AA or NA, they are pushing the idea of spiritual growth, and that if you work this program and you have this spiritual awakening, you'll be able to stay clean and sober as a result. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. What I would urge you to do, though, is to go beyond that. And I would urge everyone to do this and look at your personal growth and say, okay, spirituality is one piece of that. And so spiritual growth, you might get that in AA or NA. You might get that based on your religious community and whatever religion you partake in, or whatever. Spiritual growth is one piece of the puzzle. Recovery is about holistic health. It's about personal growth. It's about your whole life, not just the spiritual piece. And especially when it comes to dealing with something like depression, I would urge you to look at all the other pieces. So don't just do one thing for your recovery, or do one thing for your depression and expect for that to help you. Do everything. Start pulling from multiple resources, meaning obviously go see a doctor. Go see a real doctor in terms of what can I do to help with my depression. Maybe there needs to be medications, whatever. Take your doctor's advice on that. Then look at what are you doing physically? Are you still smoking? Are you getting good sleep each night? Are you working out? Are you getting exercise? Do you have decent nutrition? What are you eating? And so all those pieces of physical health, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise level, all that stuff definitely plays a big part, both in dealing with depression, but also in staying clean and sober with recovery. This is sort of the holistic approach. So in my opinion, it's sort of foolish to say, just go to a recovery program and seek out the spiritual awakening and focus in on that so narrowly that you're missing the idea of daily exercise, that you're missing the idea that you're not getting good, consistent sleep, that you're missing the idea that you're eating, junk food every day and your diet is a mess. If all those pieces come into place and you start working on all of it, in the long run, it'll transform your life in a way that you cannot predict from here. That, in other words, we can say, oh, yeah, if I was eating a little healthier and if I was getting better sleep, that might make me feel better in the long run. No, you can't sit there and predict how those changes are going to impact you until you've gone through them. And I know this for a fact because I was sitting there in that spot saying, oh, I'm going to meetings and that should be enough and I'm okay. I'm pretty happy. I had no idea at that time in my life what real recovery was all about, and sort of that next level of personal growth where you start being healthier in so many different ways, spiritually, getting good sleep, eating healthy, exercising every day, improving your relationships, all this stuff. And it doesn't happen overnight. Some of it you have to do one thing at a time. You have to tackle one problem or one challenge at a time. And that one piece makes a difference in your life, and it gave me the confidence when I would conquer one little challenge. It would give me the confidence to say, okay, what's next? What else can I do for my recovery and be able to move forward? And so I would urge you to look at that holistic piece, especially when it comes to the dual diagnosis thing. It's not just addiction you're dealing with. And keep in mind that that's not unique. Many, many people in addiction recovery are also dealing with other issues, both physical ailments as well as mental issues as well, or anxiety, depression, things of that sort. So that's a really good question, and my answer to you is explore that holistic health piece of recovery and where you can go from there. The quote that I want to use today is, if you want something you've never had, you've got to do something you've never done. And obviously that applies really well to recovery, because so many of us struggle in addiction with alcohol or drugs, and we might try to cut back, we might try to sort of patch up the problem without really fully surrendering. And what we come to realize when we finally break through our denial is that we never really changed. We never really did anything different. And so if you want different results, you got to do something you've never done before. And that's always going to feel like a leap of faith. It's always going to feel like you're sort of jumping off a cliff with your eyes closed. You don't know what to expect. There's a definite element of fear, and you can't work through that by sitting in a chair and thinking about it. You have to move through it. You have to face that fear. You have to jump off that cliff and dive headfirst into recovery. And for some people, that means going to treatment, picking up the phone, calling a treatment center, saying, "Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this time. Let's make it happen." So I want to leave you with an action assignment today, an action item you can do, and that would be to make a checklist in terms of the holistic health I was talking about and answering Samantha's question, that everyone has room for improvement in their life in terms of holistic health. And so what I would urge you to do is sit down and look at the physical, your nutrition, your sleep, your physical fitness, whether you're smoking or not. Look at the physical elements in your life, and then go through and think about mental health, emotional health, your social health, who you're hanging out with, your friends, your people you see at meetings, all that kind of stuff. Spiritual health. Are you grateful? Are you making gratitude lists? Are you, praying and meditating each day? And so create kind of a written checklist for yourself, or you can do it in journal format, and just kind of go through and look at the different pieces of your holistic health, so that you might see, there's a huge gap here. This is what I'm not doing. And if you can do that and sort of bump up that area and really focus on it, you can transform your life really quickly and get a whole lot of personal growth in a short amount of time. So that's our show for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, share it with others, and hopefully we'll see you next show. Thank you.